Hello students, this is Mr. Hart. In this video we want to continue working with Scratch and animation and specifically looking at motion. Okay, so again I'm going to go ahead and hide myself so you can see the full screen. Okay, but last time we got to the point where we could use some pretty basic code and get our animals changing their costumes or changing what they look like, right? So we get the appearance as if they're walking. But right now they're not moving, and so we want to do a little bit more to make this more realistic, right? We don't want everything moonwalking, so we want to look at motion. Okay, so if we go to motion here on the left side, our motion controls, okay, our motion code, there's a bunch of different options. So let's focus on how we can get the bear to walk across the screen. Okay, so for now I'm going to actually hide the cat. So here's a little trick. You can hide or show an object by clicking these buttons. So I'm going to hide the cat so I can focus on the bear. Okay, and we want some code to get it walking across the screen. Okay, so there's a couple ways to do that. You can move in steps, you can rotate it, etc. But I think the best and most effective way is to think of things in terms of coordinates. Okay, so I'm going to drag this piece of code that says go to some coordinate. Okay, but what do these values represent on the screen? Okay, well, the easiest way to think about it is if you put in the coordinate 0, 0, that is right in the center of the screen. Okay, you can see your sprite's current x and y coordinate down here. Okay, but 0, 0 is the center, so think of it just like a grid in math class. Okay, so if I was to draw, sorry, that's supposed to be a straight line, but if I drew an x and y axis, just like you would do in math, the center would be 0. Okay, going to the right would be the positive, sorry, my pen is acting funny, but going to the right is the positive x direction. Okay, going to the left is the negative x direction, going up is positive y, and going down is negative y. Okay, so for example, if I go to 100x, my bear moves to the right. Okay, and if I go to negative 100, it will move to the left of the center. Okay, likewise, if I go positive 100, it goes to the top, and if I go to negative 100, it goes to the bottom. Okay, so you can use those to kind of aid you, but it's also just really simple. If you just drag an item somewhere, it will tell you where those coordinates land. Okay, so if I always want my bear to start right here on my screen, then I'm just going to make sure that I put in negative 113 and negative 90 into this piece of code right here. Okay, so if I just drag my object around, I can figure out what coordinate that is, and then I can plug it into my code. So notice even my bear's over here, and now if I click here, he goes back to start. Okay, so let's actually drag this into here. So every time, no matter where the bear starts, every time I start my code, he goes back to the left side of the screen. Okay, so if he ends up over here and I click this, he'll go back to start. Okay, all right. So now let's say we want him to walk to this side of the screen. Okay, over here. Well, we look and we see that is coordinate 162, negative 96. Okay, so it might be tempting to do something like this. Okay, I want them to go to 162, negative 96. Okay, oh yeah, that's nice. It defaults to wherever the object's currently located. But watch what happens if I click this. Okay, so I'm just going to click. So he's going to start right there, and then he's magically going to jump over to that side. Okay, so we don't want go to. Okay, go to is an instant jump. Okay, what we'd rather do is a glide. Okay, so glide is slowly going to move over from this spot from the start to that spot. Okay, but we're not quite there yet. Watch what happens. Okay, so it started with the changing of the costume, and then it did the glide. Okay, so we don't want that. Okay, we want, also, first of all, we want a slower glide, maybe 2 seconds. Okay, but we want these things to happen at the same time. We don't want them to move and do the changing of the costume and then move separately, right? If we read the code this way, it would be change your costume 20 times and then do the glide. We instead want them to happen at the same time. So again, we're going to use the flag to start both. Okay? So that means when I click this flag, I want him to go back to start and then do 20 changes of costume. And I also want to glide. Okay, so watch what happens. Okay, so our timing is not quite perfect, but we're pretty close. Okay, so but now both events are occurring, and now it looks like he's walking. Okay, so maybe we'll do glide for like 2.2 seconds. There we go. Pretty good. Pretty good. Okay, so that's how we get our basic motions with animation. You'd have one set of code for the changing of costumes, and you have another set of code for the actual movement. Okay. So just remember, go to is an instantaneous jump, whereas glide is a slow movement. Okay, so most animation you're going to use glide. Okay, you won't usually need these, but you can play around with the other ones. Okay, of rotating and moving in your current direction. But for most animation, you'll just need the go to and glides. Okay, so there we go. We got our first kind of animation there going on. Okay. What if we want to change the background? Okay. Well, if we go back to our stage, okay, our stage can be just like a regular object, right? Where a regular object has costumes, our background can also have costumes. Okay, so if you click on backdrops, okay, and actually go down here to choose a backdrop, you can add a second stage. So let's say we want our bear to walk across a baseball diamond, and then he goes to a beach in Malibu. Okay, well now that's going to be our second costume. Okay, I'm going to delete this one. That's a blank costume. Okay, so we have our baseball, and then we have our beach. Okay, so now for doing the bear's code, what I want him to do is after he's done with his glide, I actually want him to go back to the start. Okay, so once he's done with the glide, go back to -113 and -90. And I also want to change the background. So if you go into looks, you can click on switch backdrop, okay, or next backdrop. Okay, so watch what happens if we run this. So it says glide to that final position, then go back to start and change the background. So he's going to go to that position, and then it'll change to the beach in Malibu. Okay, so now if we want him walking again, we'll just duplicate that same piece of code to glide. Okay, and do 162 to -96. Oh, I broke something. Hold on. Okay, and then we'll just make this repeat for even longer. Okay, so if we do this again, I think this should work. So first he'll be walking on the baseball diamond, and then he'll be walking on the beach. Okay. And we could also, at the beginning, force a certain backdrop if you want, etc. Okay. So let's read the code we have so far. Okay. We've done a lot with motion and costumes. So our one line is controlling the costume. Okay, so at the beginning, go to your starting position, okay, and then just keep changing your costume repeatedly so it gives the illusion of the bear walking. And then in this loop, it's controlling all the movement. Go to the right, then glide there for 2 seconds, 2.2 seconds, then go back to start, change the background, and glide again. Okay, so you could do this for as many backdrops as you want, depending on how you want to design your animation, etc. Okay, and just for consistency, since we have all the motion on this one, I'll actually switch it like that. But same idea. This is controlling all the changes of costumes, and this is controlling all the motion of the bear. Okay. Then if we want the bear and the cat to interact, we could, control the cat's motions and movements, etc. Okay. But for now, I'm actually just going to leave them off. Okay. Because I think the bear's cooler anyway, so we'll just stay with the bear. Okay. Walking across the different backdrops. Okay. One other thing I want to talk about in this video is adding speech bubbles. Okay, so one thing you can do that's really fun is you can add speech bubbles and sounds. Okay, so if you go to looks, okay, we talked about next costume and next backdrop. The other thing you can do is have them say something. Okay, so for example, I'm going to have the bear say, "Surf's up, dude," or something like that, okay, when he gets to the beach. Okay, so I'm going to make sure the bear always starts at the baseball diamond. Okay, so let's watch what this looks like. So the bear is walking, and then when he gets to the beach, he says, "Surf's up, dude." Okay, but notice I have to be careful because I need to make sure those are in different loops, because it did surf's up dude for 2 seconds, and then he glided again. Okay, so I'm actually going to do a separate loop again, a separate set of code for saying "surf's up, dude." Okay, so I'm going to go to events, say when flag is pressed, and then I'm going to tell it to wait 2.2 seconds, because that's how long our glides are. Okay, and then say "surf's up, dude." Okay, so the bear will walk, and then he'll say "surf's up, dude" when he gets to the backdrop. Okay, so this is a really fun component. If you want to make a fun animation, you can have say things, right? Little speech bubbles. Going back to looks, you can also do think bubbles. Okay, which just changes if they're with cartoons, whether they are nice and defined or have kind of the cloud look to them. Okay, so that's how you can add text to your code in your programs. Okay, which can make for some fun animations. Okay, last thing is sound. Okay, so this one I can't really show very well on here because I'm not sharing my sound. But if you want to play certain sounds, you can. There's some default sounds in the sound library. Okay, so if you click on this tab for sound, down here you can find different sounds. Okay, and you can just drag over them and it plays them. So we'll do a trombone. Why not? Okay, so let's say after or when he gets to the beach, it'll play the trombone sound. So we just play start sound trombone right there. Okay, so when he gets to the beach, it should play that. Okay, and there you go. So you can play sounds by adding sound code, right? And you just choose the sound, or you can record it. Okay, so you can record your own sounds if you want to make like a dialogue or something with you and your friends. Okay, you can add your own dialogue in there. Okay. All right. So I know this was a lot, but hopefully, first of all, make sure to save any work you've done. Okay. But hopefully this makes sense. And also, you obviously don't need to do this exact thing with the bear that I'm doing. I just want to show different pieces of Scratch that you can use with this example. Okay. Okay. But what have we covered so far? So we talked about the basic animation loop. We've talked about the difference between go to and glide for movement across the screen. We talked about how you can switch costumes of objects or switch the background itself. We looked at how you can do speech bubbles and do different sound effects. Okay, so you should have most of the pieces you need to make a basic animation. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And another thing to keep in mind is if you find this confusing, like don't feel bad. Like this is intro to programming. This is a new skill, so make sure to get help if you need it, as we're doing a new thing. Also, you don't need to just rely on my videos either. There are plenty of tutorials on Scratch on our YouTube, which might be very helpful. The ones on Scratch, by the way, are hands-on. Like you click on the certain buttons, and it shows you where to click, etc. So you might find those helpful as well. Okay. But just think about that as you're working on your animation project, okay? And you should have most of the pieces you need to control the basics of animation, okay? If you have any questions, let me know. Thank you guys. See you in the next video.